Wisconsin Eye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye covering the 2014 campaigns. We are on the campus of North Central Tech College in Wausau. We're interviewing State Representative John Spiros of Marshfield. He's a Republican seeking re-election in the 86th District. John, welcome back to Wisconsin Eye.
Steve, thanks for having me.
Wisconsin Eye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. John, when I talk to somebody seeking re-election after serving their first term, I kind of like to ask, where do you think you had an impact or successes in your first 2 years in the Assembly?
You know, it's kind of interesting, Steve, because I had 15 bills that I actually put forth. 8 bills were signed into law. 2 bills, one bill is a job bill. Really, it's going to help Wausau from the standpoint we extended their TID. This is on
TID
the river.
is Tax Incremental District.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So TID.
Yep.
So we extended that out, and the issue was they were having problems because of the economy. When the economy sunk in 2008, it hurt them, so we gave them a little bit of a breather and said, hey, you got some more time to do this. And it's down by the river, so they can clean it up and they can get other things done. So that's one of the bills I think that will definitely help from a job standpoint, economy as well as business. And the other one was, at the last part of the session, I put forth a bill that would protect women from exes and those who were vengeful from the standpoint of posting explicitly nude or explicitly sexually explicit pictures of them. And there wasn't any law to prohibit that.
So on the Internet?
Yes, on the Internet. So what this does is this law actually says you can't do that. We're the third state that passed that. New Jersey passed that law like 10 years ago. So I was very happy about putting that bill forth to help protect women. I heard from a number of them, even prosecuting attorneys, that were very happy about putting that bill forth. So I think that was another one that we were able to get done. There's other bills, too, that I feel pretty good about, but those are probably 2 of the big ones.
You know what intrigues me on your campaign website? You said, even going back to your days as a local official, you've never voted for a tax increase.
I have not.
Here's my question. You've seen the recent projections of a potential $1 billion deficit in the next 2-year spending cycle. If you're reelected, you going to keep true to your record of never voting for a tax increase?
Well, you're talking about a structural deficit, and I think that, in theory, to me, is not a deficit. That's something that you're looking at from 15 to 17 that you're not looking at revenues. From the standpoint of a business person, and I think you know that I'm a full-time business person as well as a full-time legislature, I see where things are improving from the economy. And when we project out, we're looking at this year. And when the state projects out, they're looking out 3 years. This year, I believe we're going to have revenues of $443 million, which is positive. And I know that John Nygren just sent out a letter to us and said that if everything continues and holds true as we've done in the last 5 years going forward, there should be a $553 million revenue increase, basically, by 2017. So I feel pretty good by taking a look at John and taking a look at those numbers that were put out. And again, when people think about the structural deficit, it's a misconception. It's just something that's construed. Now, if we get into that, I think we're going to have to look hard at other things. But I'm still not a big fan of increasing taxes.
Well, can you maintain your no tax increase record, do you think, when I switch to the subject of transportation funding? Because the projection is potentially $600 million, $700 million deficit in the next 2 years. Would you not consider either raising the gas tax or the $75 you and I pay to register our cars?
You know, I think we have to look at different things, and those are going to be tough things. Even for me, someone who doesn't like to look at an increase, I think at some point we have to look and see what do we need to do. I think the first thing we have to do is look at the DOT as well, how big they are. where we're spending the money. You know, you remember the budget, the first budget I was involved in, I think the DOT asked for a number of ads. They asked for a lot more money, and we didn't add anybody. And we were able to actually cut down. So I think, you know, when it comes down to it, we have to look at the DOT pretty strongly. There's no doubt about it that our infrastructure is important, and we have to do what's right, but we also have to protect the citizens of Wisconsin, too.
Would you consider raising gas tax? That hasn't gone up since '06. The registration fee, not since '08.
Well, I'm in the transportation business. The transportation industry has basically come out and said that's where they'd like to see an increase if they see it, in the gas tax. The hard part about the gas tax is we have more economical vehicles. So you might be driving more, but you're more efficient and there's less tax. So I'm not sure if that's the solution or not. Okay. But I think we have to look at everything. Now, I will tell you that I know others are in favor of a toll road. I'm not in favor of toll roads. I think toll roads would be tough.
In the next budget, one of the big priorities will be funding for schools. Right. What are you going to be pushing for when the school aids are debated next session?
Well, we have to take a look at everything from the school standpoint. We just put in $300 million this year. The school districts that I represent, I believe, I've been watching, and they've gone up $1.7 million. So one thing that I was proud of is that we put $75 per student in, and that did not come out of the property taxes and things like that. And it wasn't part of the funding formula. This was separate, so each school district got that. So I think we have to take a look at that. The funding method, though, is very tough. I mean, a bunch of us, when we first got in and we're freshmen, we're like, hey, this is something we should take a look at. And then when you sit down with the Legislative Reference Bureau, you find out how difficult it really is to try to make these adjustments. But I think it's one of those things, I think everything's on the table. But we have strong schools. We finished second in ACT scores. We have a teacher from Weston that's moving on, I think is a top teacher, going to basically be competing for that. I'm in a school district up in Marshfield that is outstanding. The school districts, D.C. Everest and all the rest around here do a great job. But there's challenges. There's just no doubt about there's challenges, and we need to make sure that we continue to fund our schools.
And part of that debate is choice and voucher schools. The Speaker would like to remove the 1,000 cap on choice slots outside of the city of Milwaukee and Racine. Do you think that cap should come off, John?
I think that we have to make sure that everything is working like it's supposed to be, that we're taking, bottom line is this is for children. What it comes down to is education is for the child. And basically, it's for our children who are struggling in schools that are struggling themselves, to help them, give them a chance somewhere else to actually succeed. And I'm definitely for that. Now, I think that we have to make sure that there's checks and balances as we do that. We did the 1,000, and that 1,000 for any school district, and Wausau was one of them that lost a few students to that, but they did not lose that from a revenue standpoint. We made sure for the first 3 years that was not going to hurt. So I think that we continue to take a look at that. We make sure there's checks and balances, and from my standpoint, I'll take a look at it as it comes across my desk.
The governor this summer asked that Wisconsin withdraw from Common Core standards. Your position?
I don't know enough about Common Core. I can tell you that I've seen some of the math problems, and one of the issues that I have is when I was growing up, I struggled. My mother helped me, and I needed help, and there was people there to help me. But if someone were to bring me some of those problems home, one of my children, one of my grandchildren, I wouldn't have any idea. It'd be very difficult. So I think we have to make sure that what we're trying to teach is what's going to happen as a child grows up. We want to make sure that as they grow up, there's education. This is what they're being taught, because this is what they're going to end up with as far as in college or beyond. And I think restructuring things just that doesn't have a benefit, but it has to still. The answers are the same, but it's a whole different way of getting there. I think we have to take a look at that. I'm willing to take a look and see what the governor is proposing. My big issue is I don't want to make it political. I want to make sure that things stay at the local level.
Okay. Health care funding. 1 in 5 Wisconsin residents get their health care from our Medicaid. Right. The American Hospital Association says our Medicaid reimbursement rates are the second lowest in the nation. Should they go up?
You know, I've seen things from WHA. If you recall, in the last budget, we put money in to help from the standpoint of emergency rooms, because a lot of people come in to emergency rooms and you can't turn anybody away, and they don't have any insurance, or they can't pay for it. So there's money there for them, and I think that was one thing we did that was very positive. But on the reimbursement, I think we really have to take a look at that. But like everything else, it's where the revenues are, where the money is. But it's definitely something we need to take a look at.
The bill to legalize medical marijuana will be reintroduced next session. Now you have Colorado and Washington legalizing recreational marijuana. Your position on both issues?
Well, I was on Children's and Families. I was part of a meeting, in a conference room with hundreds of people, in a very small conference room with all children. And we passed the cannabinoid oil bill,
yes,
which I think was very historic for our state. One thing I'll say about that is I sure hope our doctors start getting into this and start utilizing that. We have children that are actually dying and are still having problems from the standpoint of seizures. So that's one issue. As you move over to medical marijuana, I think there's still a lot of questions when it comes down to it. I think we have to really understand the benefits, and I think that's one of those things that as science works, and we can take a look at it, we can look at it from that standpoint. From a recreational standpoint, I'm a former police officer. And my concern is, it's just like from a DUI. A DUI, as someone who's under the influence of alcohol, you can do a breathalyzer. Someone who's under the influence of marijuana, blood. This isn't one of those things you draw and then you identify something. It usually takes a little bit of time. So I think you have challenges there. You have challenges with accidents, things like that. And I do safety in my normal job, my other job. And so for me, it's a struggle for me to take a look at this and say this is very safe and let's just do it. I think we can monitor what's happening in Washington and Oregon and Colorado. I think one thing you have to remember, too, is the federal government has a law against it. Those states are doing it, and so far they aren't pushing the envelope. But you can bet that if something bad happens, I bet you they'll push the envelope. And I think, right now I'd rather be on the sideline seeing what happens there and understanding things. Last year, I think there was a study that came out. One study said, hey, everything's fine with marijuana. Another study said, lose blood cells in your brain cells, other things, and that it's very dangerous. So I think there's still a lot that we have to understand.
And again, drawing on your experience as a former police officer, first offense drunken driving, should it be a crime, John?
Well, we put forth a new bill last time that anybody that is stopped will have to go in front of a judge. I think we've done a lot from an education standpoint. One thing I really like is the pub pilots. Someone at work does the pub pilots, and they think it's a great program. I think education and programs like that help. But, bottom line is we need to make sure that whatever we're going to enact as far as a law, that the benefit is there. The benefit is to take a drunk driver off the road. So as long as the benefit's there, it's something that we should take a look at. But again, I think the education and doing some of the pub pilots and trying to push people that says, just like when they say, give your keys to somebody else, don't drive drunk, that's very important. I think that a lot of these states have done great when it comes down to advertising. Because you see where the car's filled with alcohol, they open the door and the alcohol falls out,
yes,
and the officer's right there. I think those are positive. So it's just that we have to make sure that we continue to educate.
Recently, the governor said if he's reelected, he'll push to drug test those receiving food stamps and drawing unemployment benefits. Could you vote for that?
It's one of those things I want to take a look at. I have a big question. If somebody tests positive, what do you do with them?
Theoretically, they would potentially lose the benefits.
So then what happens to them? So I think that when you have something from a cause and effect, you have to really take a look and say that if we're going to do this, what's the effect going to be, and what's the solution? I don't have any problem with going forward with something like that, as long as we say, okay, they're going to lose benefits, but how at some point do you get them back into society? And I agree with everyone from the standpoint that it's not, if someone's spending their money on drugs, it's a bad thing. It shouldn't happen. We shouldn't, they're abusing the system. My big thing is, and I haven't heard an answer, what do you do? They lose it, but then what happens?
Finally, the governor said we should not only freeze tuition for 2 years on the UW system campuses, but on the tech colleges. Could you support that?
You know, I don't know. I understand the UW system. We've put a lot of money into tech schools from the standpoint of skilled labor. I hear from a lot of the businesses in the local area, this is a key factor is the tech schools. I have a bill that I'm looking at for veterans that, just like with the UW, that they can get what experience that they had, can come in and work for education benefits. The same thing I'm looking at from a tech school standpoint, so that we can get these veterans like myself into education, or get that benefit of what they've studied, and then get them into the work into the job area.
The workplace.
Yeah.
Do you want to highlight any differences between you and your opponent on November 4?
I think you know me from last time. You know, I want to keep a clean campaign. I want to keep it above board. I feel that I've done a nice job. I like representing this area. I like representing Wisconsin. Central Wisconsin's very strong, and I feel good about representing them. So I really don't know a whole lot, but I'm not, you know, from my standpoint, it's about me and what I bring, and that's what I'm hoping the people, when they make their decision, will vote for John Spiros on November 4th.
Thank you. State Representative John Spiros of Marshfield is a Republican seeking re-election in the 86th Assembly District. John, thanks for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
Steve, thank you very much.
Thanks.